widows and orphans, children and ailing ones, strangers and outcasts. These are the ones that faithful people are charged to care for. So I put the scene here of Jesus watching the people coming through the temple to make their offering. And aha, a widow comes who gave her all. I wanted you to see the radical faithfulness that Jesus saw in this poor widow woman. I wanted you to see his anger over the scribes who devour widows' houses, contrasted with the widow who came and gave her all. The nameless widow, the invisible widow, one can presume no one else in the whole of the synagogue that day saw her except Jesus. Please note as well, Jesus is not sanctioning the teaching that would have this poor widow give her last 2 pennies into the treasury. Jesus is simply pointing out the vast fraud and hypocrisy of the temple or church leaders in people ignoring the Torah, we would say ignoring the gospel, in order to protect themselves. Contrasted with this woman who simply was faithful to the last. And notice what I wrote next, because I placed the disciples' awe at the beauty and the seeming permanence of the massive edifice of that temple. What did they say? Look, teacher, what large stones and what a large building. And did you hear what Jesus responded to those disciples? All will be thrown down, he said. Preservation of buildings over the preservation of life, of those who are most vulnerable, is anathema to God. It is the exact opposite of what God requires from God's people. Karen told me this story, which I want to share with you. Apparently it happened in Nashville, not too far from us, where a church that defied all those church growth strategists gave some land adjoining their property for the construction of 5 houses for the working poor. The congregation had identified a critical need in the community as low-income housing. But there was little land in that community for putting up housing, and even though the land had been intended to build a paved parking lot for anticipated growth that would happen in the church, that little congregation got together and in a risky act of devoted ministry gave up the land and entered into a collaboration to build this housing. So now there are 5 families who once had no homes that now have homes next to the church. And the irony is that the church is now growing as the often neglected and frequently rejected people of the neighborhood are finding a new community in that church that took a risk in giving itself away. I hear that there's a new building going up next to this church for the sake of the community. Sisters and brothers from the future, it's never too late to learn from Rabbi Jesus this core teaching that radical obedience and enormous risk is what is required for doors to open and transformation to take place. God has given you to each other here in Parker Settlement, and God has done that in order that we might celebrate the breaking in of God's kingdom right here on Highway 66 right now. We have to give our life away in order to have it. Jesus said that in so many different ways. Look, I put on the lips of Jesus watched that woman give her last 2 pennies. Look, she gave out of her poverty, putting in everything she had, all that she had to live on. I challenge you, sisters and brothers, to take your call from that